Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, October 21st, 2020. The bell is back. Does everybody enjoy the bell? Tom's been working overtime, by which I mean working at all, really, honestly. Working on the openings and closings, and the artwork of this show is all overtime for him. It's not his job, and he does it anyway. Thanks very much, very much, very much. I can't express my appreciation enough, or enough times, I guess. And rather than do it all in one sentence that I repeat over and over again, I'll repeat the fragments of the sentence. That is, repeat the fragments of the sentence over and over again to emphasize how much I appreciate it. Thanks again. Even Justice likes that one. Not like Justice is, super critical or anything. He's not that picky and yelling at me all the time about my intros. This is just a nice one. I've enjoyed the new music that I've gotten, and he helped smooth this transition tremendously by putting all this stuff together. Tom did, and brought back some oldies but goodies that longtime listeners recognized and realized, probably for the first time, that we did used to have that, and we changed to that. And I did have a couple of people say, "What happened to that nice soothing bell?" And a few others say, "Oh, I had a heart attack when you put on the music, and it came from out of nowhere because I just listened to the podcast, and all of a sudden this music is just blaring out." But it's a tough thing to do in the morning. But I guess if you're a podcast listener and in the afternoon, most people have survived the heart attacks to be able to write to me about it and say, I could use something more soothing. So the bell is back, and I think a lot of people are going to like that. I did. Other news that we'll be gathering up today, some of it also soothing. That's good news. Some of it rather jarring. But nothing super crazy and upsetting, I don't think, this morning. I don't know. I'm sort of casting eyes about trying to see what we're up against this morning. Donald Trump, as it turns out, he's in the news. I know that's surprising to you. Today's big news for him, I think, the revelation, and it shouldn't be a revelation at this point in time, but the revelation that Trump maintains a bank account in China because reasons, and there are some, I don't know, I guess I could come up with some non-nefarious reasons why someone might maintain a bank account in China, but it's not a great thing for the President of the United States to be doing, certainly not a great thing for the President of the United States to be doing and not revealing in his financial disclosures. So that adds another layer on top of things. It doesn't, I don't know. We'll sort through the news. It looks like, at some point, a few $1 million moved back and forth from in between, Chinese authorities, I guess, because everybody who does business in China does involve the authorities there, and then into his pocket. I assume the excuse is, this is my business, not me personally, but you know how the Trump organization runs. It's basically him personally. Filtering things through a bunch of LLCs that mean nothing, except that they help obfuscate sometimes who the owner of the LLC is. Not usually the case, though, with Trump's stupid LLCs, because they have the name Trump in them. Anyway, that, I think, probably deserves a lot more attention, and I'm sure it's going to get it. It appears that people are geared up and ready to discuss that, so that's good news. There's polls, and as always, there's a pandemic. I don't know if you are aware of this thing, but as we announced in our morning post today over on our Kagro in the Morning group page over at Daily Kos, we are lucky enough to be able to, we're so efficient here at Kagro in the Morning that we have combined our coverage and analysis of both the polls and the pandemic in just one guest, Greg Dworkin, who is, of course, stealing himself, stealing, not EA, stealing himself, to bring us the raft of stories that he has ready for us. Bill is ready for the morning show, as he tweets out each morning. Today we'll remember to share it. The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. That's what this whole gobbledygook is about. Kagro X me, David Waldman, reminds you that Chinese taxes are due by midnight tonight. True. and you won't find that notice in your cookie or anything. You're just going to have to know it. So hop to it, all you scofflaws, or Beijing will be most upset. It's true, as it turns out, people pointing out apparently the excuse for holding on to the Chinese bank account for the Trump organization is that, they've been trying, or in the past anyway, they were trying to do business there. They have been trying to do business there since he's become president, but in Ivanka's name rather than in Donald's name. And so because they try to, open various businesses in mainland China and Hong Kong, etc., they have maintained an office there and a bank account for paying taxes on the money that they earn in China, and that seems like a weird idea. I mean, I was going to say it's a foreign concept, not in the sense that he's paying taxes to a foreign country, which he is, but paying taxes at all is a foreign concept for Donald Trump. And as many have pointed out, he will have paid more in taxes to the government of China, communist China, more in taxes to China than he paid to the United States for many years. So that's also probably not a great look for an American president who wants to blame everything on China, blames the coronavirus on China still. Not looking like he's going to be able to get away with that one, according to the polls, as Greg will update us shortly, I am sure. The other breaking news, I guess, because I just saw it, and I don't know whether that really counts as top breaking news, from my top breaking news source, Alyssa Milano. I mean, she's out there on Twitter. I happen to see her retweet this news when we're in polling and endorsement mode. It will become relevant. Apparently, USA Today, they say, has broken with tradition. Her tweet says that USA Today endorses Joe Biden for president, and that it's the first time they have ever endorsed a presidential candidate. Now, I didn't know whether that was really true or not, because I don't really follow USA Today and who they endorse, but it sounds like the sort of thing that USA Today would do. They don't want to offend anybody, so, they're giving out for free at hotels and places, and I guess they don't want complaints. I don't know, whatever stupid idea it is. Although maybe it's not. Maybe it's actually a pretty good idea, because really, do newspaper endorsements matter that much? Well, I guess this one does, because they've never done them. And I guess the news is that they've never done them because they didn't want to offend anybody. And this time they said, to hell with it. It doesn't matter whether we're offending anybody. This has to be done. According to their own, their own version of events is, in fact, that they haven't made presidential endorsements in the past. They did say in 2016 we broke tradition. That would be their own tradition. Like, I don't really consider USA Today anything a tradition, but they do. They do it every day. They broke tradition in urging, you, not to vote for Trump. But I guess that doesn't count in their mind as an endorsement. They just said it's an anti-endorsement. Don't vote for Trump. But, go vote for the Libertarian or something, I guess was okay with them. But now it says we're making our first presidential endorsement, so Alyssa's right. We hope it's our last. Interesting thing to say. They're very timid people, I guess, over at USA Today. So there you go. If you are the sort of person that's overly influenced by the newspaper you find outside your hotel room door in the morning, or you find for sale at McDonald's, then I guess you got your work cut out for you, and you know what to do. Maybe it's time for you to get out and vote early. I encourage you to do it. I finally made it to the polls and voted yesterday. I say that now before turning the microphone over to Greg Dworkin, so I am not scolded. I don't think he was really going to yell too much, but he's going to remind us to vote. Right, Greg? Good morning. How are you?
Right. I voted. Have you voted?
Yes, I did yesterday.
Good. And what district are you in?
That one. Which district? Yeah. Oh, you mean my congressional district? You want my precinct number? I'm in the 10th congressional district.
Virginia 10.
Yes.
Okay. So Virginia 2, I was looking at this morning.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I was looking at it is because there's a new Wason Center poll from that university.
Okay, yes.
And it's interesting because it has Elaine Luria
Christopher Newport University, yes?
Yes,
okay.
Christopher Newport, CNU.
Right.
It has Elaine Luria up over Scott Taylor in a rematch, but she's up by 7 points. And more interestingly, is that Biden is up by 9.
Biden by 9 in Virginia. Oh, in the district. Okay.
In the district. Okay.
Right.
And that's a district, I think, that Trump won by 3 points. So that would be consistent with a 12-point swing. And we're seeing that all over. So when we're going to talk about polling today, just to put things in perspective, Biden's doing fine. We'll talk big picture in a minute.
Okay.
But there's some important polls out this morning.
Joe.
Let me just give you a quick rundown. Florida, 51-47 Biden. That's +4, and that's from Civics. Civics also did Minnesota, 53-43, Biden +10. And Nevada, 52-43, Biden +9. So that's all looking good and consistent with the 10-point lead he has in national polls. But the most important poll this morning was probably USA Today, Suffolk, and they have
USA Today. All right.
Biden up in Pennsylvania by 7. That's a very solid poll. It usually isn't Biden friendly.
Oh, well.
And if you take Pennsylvania off the map, Michigan, Wisconsin, I mean, Biden basically has this election right where he wants it at this point. That's enough to win.
Carefully worded. Nice. Okay.
And then if you're going to add Florida and look at places like Iowa, we have an Iowa poll coming out. I don't know if it's today, but New York Times Siena is going to look at Iowa. There's another Iowa poll supposed to be out, too.
All right.
And I think that's Monmouth. So there's going to be a ton of polling, even though we've had a dearth of it for the past few days. Well, the point, though, is that it isn't just, and I think we've talked about this on the show, it isn't just the state and national polls. It's also the district polls, and that's why that Virginia 2 district is so important. As a matter of fact, Greg Sargent interviewed Dave Wasserman. As Biden and Trump battle for white voters, district-level polls are revealing. And what he says is we don't have access to that kind of data, but Wasserman does.
Okay.
And in 2016, he was able to see erosion in white working class districts for Clinton that presaged what happened in the election.
Okay, I see.
And this time, no, it's telling a different story, says Greg Sargent, one in which Trump is not matching 2016 totals in white working class House districts and falling further behind in districts heavy on college-educated whites. So here's how the dialogue goes. How many of these polls have you seen, says Greg Sargent. Wasserman says, known as Redistrict on Twitter, by the way.
That's right.
Hundreds in the most competitive band of around 50 districts. And why are they a good window? Because you can measure how far ahead or behind Trump margins were, like in Virginia 2, the one I gave you.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't being detected in state-level polling because the state polling chronically undersamples white working-class voters, but these district-level polls pick it up. So, how's it looking? And Wasserman says, well, in my 13 years of covering House races, this is probably the most consistent cycle I've seen. Trump is underperforming his 2016 margins by 8 to 10 points in most competitive districts.
That will do it.
If Trump won a district by 3 last time, he's losing it by 6. It's pretty consistent. And there are exceptions. And the first is in districts that are heavy on upscale suburbs. Trump is underperforming his 2016 margins by even more, over 10 points. Like Indiana's 5th, Missouri's 2nd, Arizona's 6th, in the Phoenix suburbs, if you happen to be in any of those places. Now, in heavily Hispanic districts, we're seeing Trump come close to or exceed his 2016 performance. South Florida, South Texas, California Central Valley. And he's probably gained more in South Florida than in South Texas, but it's still true. And so it basically confirms the trend in national polls. Trump is doing slightly better than expected with Hispanic voters. And, again, we've talked about this on the show.
Yeah.
Many Anglos consider Hispanic voters to be people of color. Hispanic voters consider Hispanic voters to be white.
Oh.
And vote along the same, way that white voters do.
Well,
and so white working class and Latino working class are very similar.
I don't know what to make of that. Yeah.
And so why should you expect them all of a sudden to vote like some other group when they don't see themselves as some other group?
Or even if they did, why couldn't they vote like that?
But this is self-reporting. And so, it's important to keep in mind. Nonetheless, Biden's making that up with seniors.
Okay. Oh,
right?
That's nice.
And let me just give you a quick example of why that would be. All right?
Yeah.
Trump's closing argument right now.
Yes.
While Biden is making the argument with Sam Elliott, in one of these homespun, Heartland America ads about bringing us together.
Yes, lots of chatter about that one.
Trump is attacking 60 Minutes and Mr. Rogers. These are two icons to seniors.
That's true. That does seem like a dumb play for seniors.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's also having
attack
super spreader
McDonald's
events that are
coffee.
trying to kill us. So, he's just not running that well with seniors. And that's his closing argument.
Yeah, that's a good ad for him. I hate McDonald's coffee and filet of fish. That'll solidify things.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the polling showing in districts that are heavily on blue collar whites? He should attack Dolly Parton. That's what I think he should do.
Has he not done that?
I don't know. He hasn't. If he should, that'll do it. So does that apply in places like Southwest Pennsylvania, Northern Michigan? Yeah, and it's exceptionally meaningful there. Trump clearly needs to get back to his 2016 numbers in those places to win. He's not. And by the way, those are states that don't have a heavy Latino vote. So the fact that Trump can pick up extra support in Florida doesn't help him in Minnesota or Pennsylvania. Okay, here's another, if you want to be really granular. Biden's getting halfway back to 2012 numbers for Democrats. There are exceptions in districts where Trump's trade policies are popular, like the Iron Range of Minnesota, but southern Minnesota is farming, and we're seeing much better numbers for Biden there, despite the fact that, I would add, Trump is spending billions of dollars to try to bribe farmers.
Yes, although I understand he's looking at things granularly, or in a granular way. Apparently, the money very unevenly distributed as between red and blue counties. They got county level data, and apparently 90% of the money has gone to red counties, and blue county farmers are out of luck.
Which is all of a piece. Look, Mike Pompeo is using the State Department to try to reelect Trump. Ratcliffe over at the National Intelligence Office, whatever you call it, DNI, is trying to use that to reelect Trump.
Yes.
All of the apparatus of the government is being used to try to reelect Trump. It's going to fail, and we have to have a major house cleaning there with some laws on the books to prevent that from happening again.
Yes.
But he's also trying to bribe farmers. So it's all of a piece.
Right.
And what's interesting is that just as Sean Trendy wrote 4 years ago, there may be white working class voters who didn't turn out in 2016, but Trump's not winning a big enough share of them to make up for the fact that he's losing college-educated and suburban voters. And those college-educated and suburban voters are getting turned off completely to the Republican Party, which is going to help the Democrats in the Senate. So that's really the big picture that you have to look at in terms of what's happening with the polls. Now, polls are great. I love polls, but don't get overly excited about them. Don't worry if you see a plus up, a plus one up, or a plus down two. The bigger picture is, of course, the aggregates, and that data just supports everything else that we're seeing. Fundraising, turnout, enthusiasm, endorsements like USA Today.
Enthusiasm.
Which I think 4 years ago said don't vote for Trump, but this year they said actually vote for Biden. Big difference.
Right.
And also where the candidates are spending their time.
Yes.
All right, Biden is spending time in the battleground states, and Trump is going to Macon, Georgia, and Pence is going to Indiana.
That must be why I thought I saw out of the corner of my eye somewhere. I saw that I guess he was in Pennsylvania most recently, Trump, and I guess told the crowd, "I don't really want to be here," which I think he meant to say, ordinarily I guess I shouldn't be here. I should be out.
Yeah, but he has no filter, so what he's thinking comes right out of his mouth.
I don't really want to be here. This
place
smells like manure.
You don't want to be here, but hey, it's the Beach Boys' greatest hits. We're going to do the Reprise album.
It's a good strategy. I hate you.
Right. So not only do I hate Mr. Rogers, who's from Pittsburgh, but I don't want to be here in Pennsylvania at all.
Yeah.
Great closing argument there. I mean, the guy is losing. He's not only losing the election, he's losing his mind. You can just see, since he's unfiltered, you just see it all come out. I want suburban women to like me. Don't you like me? Why won't you like me? I'm going to have to leave the country if I don't win. All this stuff, he's losing. He knows it, and it's just coming out.
Okay, well.
Right? So do not freak out when you see a bad poll, good poll. You're going to see plenty of good polls. There can be a ton of polling now. But the average is still where it is 10.5. It's not going to tighten. It may not widen, I'm not sure, but it could. And then talking about these possible landslides are important because it's on the menu in terms of what might happen. But the win is the most important. Get the win first and then worry about the landslide second.
Okay. Seems like, all right, well.
Steve Shell points out 650,000 people voted yesterday in Florida.
Oh.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Most ever he's ever seen, and he's been watching Florida for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Well, good. It's warm weather. It's nice.
People want to vote.
Outside.
People want to come out and vote.
They're
So the idea of following early voting isn't to guess who wins. It's to celebrate democracy and the fact that people actually want to do this.
All right. Yeah. It was a pleasant enough experience for me. I live in one of those areas where they have working voting machines and stuff. So it went pretty quick.
I love dropping my voter by mail that I filled out and then put in the drop box. I love doing that.
In the cardboard slot.
Yeah, well, that was for the application for the ballot. Once the ballot came, they actually had a metal box ready.
That's good. Yeah, good for security, etc. And you don't want to mix up the applications into ballots like Trump does when he complains about fraud.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I liked the cardboard box story. That's all.
It's a great visual too.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the background for what's going on here.
I am pleased with it. Yes. You know what made me think when you're telling me the Luria story, the Virginia 2 story,
one of our favorite districts.
And then you're talking about all of the swing districts that have changed so drastically and that were narrowly, sometimes not so narrowly, for Trump in the last election and now swinging for Biden with Democrats leading. I was just thinking they're going to have to come up with some interesting new criteria for the for fundraising at the DCCC next time. The frontline members, all usually populated with people who managed a Democratic House win in a Trump district, and with fewer Trump districts available that have anything like a sizable Democratic registration. It's going to be, it'll end up being the same people who naturally win by less. But yeah, you can no longer
and
say
speaking of those kinds of districts, I feel
district.
Obligated to mention Abigail Spanberger.
That's true.
I don't have any data on her.
Because anytime you can't not mention her. She's the middle of the road, and both sides demand it. So
yeah, exactly.
All
right. So as Dave Robkoff points out on Twitter today, it appears we've moved from the long con phase of the Trump presidency into the F you, I'm out of here phase. The president's focus seems to have shifted to complaining, punishing his enemies, and trying to figure out how to avoid prosecution and jail time. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I think it's a good place for Biden to be.
Yeah, and that's what Trump has to keep an eye on, staying out of jail. I don't blame him for wanting to stay out.
Right.
I don't think he should, but okay.
Right. For you seniors out there who think that politics just aren't fresh, we have hepcats for you here. We have Chuck Schumer referring to Leader McConnell as Dr. No, and Donald Trump name dropping Bob Hope.
Really? Okay.
And so, as Jake Tapper points out, 23 skidoo.
Tie an onion to your belt, etc.
All reet.
Okay.
So it's, I don't know why young people aren't interested in politics. It's just so contemporary.
It's just like Bob Hope. Oh,
yeah,
what?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting.
So we have some numbers today from John Kovalan, who's tweeting as Win with JMC. That's his polling and advisement shop. But he's got an early voting report, and the sources are Election Project, that's Mike McDonald, UMich Voter 99, political data, 88.5 million mail requests throughout the country. And those mail requests run 45-26 Democratic to Republican. Those are all vote by mail states, 88.5 million requests. And so far, 29.6 million mail ballots have been sent in, and 10 million in person.
Okay.
Right? So that's nearly 40 million people who have voted already. And those already voted, 51-28 Democratic.
Okay. So,
So that
right,
doesn't
if
tell
you're
you who's going to win.
Allowed, you could say early lead. But
We
you're not
don't
allowed to
know
say
what kind
that.
of lead is necessary. We expect a red tsunami on Election Day. We
Guess.
also don't know, just because it says D on the ballot, who they're voting for. We don't know who the independents and NPAs, the non-party-affiliated people, are voting for. We do know
of course,
that that's a lot of people, and because of the pandemic and the encouragement to vote by mail and vote early, we have no historical precedents in presidential races to compare this to. So we don't know, in effect, what kind of lead Democrats have to have in order to feel comfortable about what happens on Election Day. So you can't look at these numbers and say, oh, we're doing well enough so that we should win. You can look at it and say this is a necessary but not sufficient thing to do in order to pull off a win. And so at least you did the necessary part. As to whether it's sufficient or not, we'll just have to wait.
Okay, we'll wait and see. And speaking of the early voting thing, my report from on the ground, the Trump people, they had Trump people at the polls, and they were, putting up signs and handing out literature and trying to convince voters. I don't know how much luck they had in my district, but all happily masked, no missing masks whatsoever, which is, good news for our health, of course. But it struck me as fun to watch that, I'm sure that some of them are ordinarily mask protesters, but when they're in a place that they can actually be thrown out of, that they really want to be in, and they know they're at the mercy of the authorities, no complaints about masks from the vocal Trump supporters who were there. So I thought that was kind of fun. We should just vote every day, I guess. That's the only thing that gets them to keep those masks on and leave them on, and not a peep about it to any of the voters they were trying to persuade. So, good day for me, anyway. We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio.
So I have to tell the audience
yes.
my biggest disappointment this morning.
I'm so sorry. Yes.
So I was scrolling through the USA Today Suffolk poll because I thought it was interesting. And this ad popped up for Borat. And it's a picture of him nude, except for he's wearing a mask, a surgical mask over his genitals.
True.
And the ad says, wear masks, save lives. And I sent it to David during his segment. And, he's too much of a professional to burst out laughing when I sent it. So I was really disappointed.
I'm sorry.
I was really trying to make him lose his composure there, and it didn't work.
I'll do it now. Oh, my God. Yeah, I think a bigger version of the picture might have done it. But it was funny. I was scrolling through, and I definitely saw it. And it in the excitement of the show, I wasn't clear on where was I seeing this thing. And I just thought, a Borat picture on Twitter. That's funny. And I didn't realize that it was in Greg's feed here. And it's quite a shot. He's also
anyway,
got
you'll see it. You'll see
now.
it maybe during the roundup later if you take a look. Maybe, I don't know, but it's funny.
What a day!
Anyway, this is a really interesting column.
Not the Borat one.
That's in the New York Times by Jason Zengerle. Okay,
All right.
And it's called "How 2020 Blew Up Campaign Reporting."
Oh.
And it's a story about John Heilman and the circus, and how he wrote a book about campaigning, and Double Down, and some other books with the now disgraced Mark Halperin of It's Good for McCain fame.
Yes, okay.
Remember that guy? So he's gone. He's out. But he was talking about how forlorn Heilman is because he gets together on this political documentary called The Circus, where they're supposed to discuss what's happening with the election, except they can't do a roundtable because of the pandemic. So everybody's separate, basically doing a Zoom meeting.
Well, okay.
And it just doesn't really work the same way. And, they were talking about, for example, when Biden chooses Kamala Harris, Heilman heads to a mostly empty Delaware high school gym for the ticket's first joint appearance. This has been a flawlessly executed and in most respects totally normal vice presidential rollout. And I remember him saying this on Nicole Wallace's show. Until this event, there's no applause, there's no energy in the room. It just didn't work.
Yeah,
and 2 months later, the optics and stage managing of the Harris selection completely forgotten. And the 30 minutes the circus spent obsessing over it serves as a useful reminder of how political reporters have tried and failed to craft conventional narratives out of this decidedly unconventional election.
Maybe you can't normalize it.
Exactly. The race has featured in just the past few weeks Donald Trump's tape remarks to Bob Woodward admitting he downplayed the seriousness of the pandemic, the death of RBG, the revelation of Trump's income taxes, Trump's becoming infected with the virus. And the pressing questions for reporters didn't involve the results of polls, but of COVID and blood oxygen tests. And the standard models of campaign reporting didn't seem up to the task of explaining the race. And nowhere is that more evident than in a show like The Circus. Okay. And that's true. It's all true. You can't game change and double down this stuff. Axios and Politico are not helpful in terms of keeping up with the pandemic and what's going on. And, of course, I'm going to pat myself on the back and tell you, I said this at the very beginning of the pandemic. This is going to be the thing that drives this election, and the reporters just don't get it. And they keep writing things like, well, putting the pandemic aside, this is what we think of Kamala Harris's rollout, and it doesn't work. That's not how it's going to work, and it's not how it is working.
Right. Absent oxygen and life on Earth, this would have been something
let me give you
else.
an example. Topher Spiro today, one of the healthcare gurus on Twitter, it was yesterday, I guess, because I saved it, but put a series of tweets, projections of cases in select battleground states in early November. So we went to a website that projects how many COVID cases there were going to be. And this is a graphic, so I'll just tell you on radio, you see the line climbing for states like Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Texas is relatively steady. Wisconsin is skyrocketing. And, in fact, that's what's happening now. But the point is, as we get closer to Election Day in the next 2 weeks, it's going to go even higher.
Yes.
These are states that are the battleground states, and as the pandemic numbers increase, it completely undercuts Trump's chosen preferred, not attack Mr. Rogers and 60 Minutes, but his chosen and preferred narrative of we've turned the corner, elect me, and I'll open up the economy. And in fact, you have these cases surging in the very areas that Trump needs to win votes, and it's surging in the rural areas, which is why Biden is cutting into Trump's lead. And, it's just the two are hand in glove. You cannot separate them. And so the whole idea of putting the pandemic aside, let's see how much applause Kamala Harris got, it's just dumb. It was always dumb. And now it's just so evident that the pandemic is the thing that's going to make Trump lose the election.
Yeah. One of the other things that you've been very clear about from the beginning is that the pandemic sort of has its own rules, and some of them are inviolable. It's interesting that with Trump having driven his people away from early voting, voting by mail, absentee voting, what have you, and instead being in-person election day voters, there will be people who brave the virus, people who believe it's a hoax or whatever, and they don't care about the risk. But there are also going to be people who have it who simply are not going to be able to get out of bed and vote. And they can't imagine that ever being the case, because I'd walk over broken glass, as they say, crawl over broken glass to vote on election day. Unless you can't muster the strength to break that glass in the first place. It's not going to be a whole lot of people, but it may just be the margin that's needed. There's going to be, tens of thousands of voters who had intended to get out of bed and vote for Donald Trump, and even 2 days before Election Day thought, well, I'm not feeling well, but I'll cover up, I'll put on a mask so nobody bothers me, and I'll stand in line. And then by the time Election Day rolls around, they say, I don't think I can stand in my house, much less online. And the virus there will have won. You will not be able to outlogic it or convince yourself you don't have it or anything.
You
And
know,
it's
or as
gonna
Donald
peak in
Trump famously
November
said,
2nd.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
This is a roll call piece. And again, I'm an old timer. You know, I not only know who Bob Hope was, but also, and by the way, Bob Hope once did a Donald Trump impersonation.
Oh yeah. Well, he would have been
That
famous
video is floating
during
around.
during his lifetime, way back when.
Yeah.
Bob Hope had one of the
And
first
it was not
fancy
kind
golf
to
carts.
Trump. But
No.
this is Stu
could it
Rothenberg writing in Roll Call. Stu Rothenberg and Charlie Cook are the senior political analysts who try to tell you
seniors.
what's going on. And both of them said a long time ago, Biden wins.
Okay.
Right? But this one is recent, and it's Stu Rothenberg writing, "Excuse me, but is that a partisan wave building?
Or you're
Democratic
just happy
polling,
to see it.
enthusiasm, fundraising make Republicans nervous. GOP insiders are now hoping for the best but bracing for the worst. Veteran Republicans have all but given up on Donald Trump's reelection and are now focused on minimizing the damage down ballot. They criticize Trump's poor messaging and salute the Democrats' fundraising numbers, which reflect Democratic enthusiasm and foretell Republican problems down the stretch. And while Republicans still have a chance to hang on to the Senate, Democratic gains are inevitable, and a net Democratic gain of at least 3 seats is likely. But Republican nervousness doesn't end there. They fear that dampened GOP turnout on Election Day, just the thing you were just talking about, combined with unusually strong turnout by younger voters and a clear Democratic preference among seniors, could produce Democratic Senate and House gains that were once simply unimaginable.
That would be good. I'd like to imagine those.
Yeah, it's certainly true that the presidential election ain't over till it's over. Remember, every article has to have a "to be sure" paragraph. This is it.
Right.
To be sure, it's not over yet. But focusing on Republican registration gains in some states or shy Trump voters ignores the mountain of public opinion data that shows Biden poised for a clear win. Remember, the national polls were largely correct 4 years ago in predicting the national vote. It's a parlor game on Twitter to say, on this date, Hillary Clinton had this kind of lead, and it's just like or maybe a point better than Joe Biden. And then she plummeted. And by the way, the election was 5 days later, so we're actually 5 days into past whatever Hillary Clinton date you're mentioning. And by the way, it's not 2016. And by the way, Clinton wasn't at 50 the way Biden is. And by the way, Trump wasn't an incumbent the way he is. And by the way, there's no Comey. So other than those things, those are both years that start with 2-0, so you got that right. Of course, the current 10-point contest could close by a couple of points. Maybe the Trump campaign can turn out large numbers of new voters, improve the patient's standing in key states, benefit from the final debate. But on the other hand, Biden could add to his current margins. You see, here's a guy who says, you know what, could go the other way too.
Right.
And that's all I've been saying. I'm not guaranteeing a Biden blowout. I'm just saying that every time you say, but Trump could win, you have to add, oh, by the way, it's also equally likely polls are making a mistake in the other direction, and Biden may be further ahead than you think.
Okay.
As I, Stu Rothenberg and others, have written repeatedly, the dynamic in 2020 with Trump in the White House and COVID dominating the narrative is much different from 4 years ago when Trump had no record, a wheelbarrow full of promises, an opponent who was much less popular than analysts appreciated. And the October 9 to 12 NBC News Wall Street Journal poll confirmed what we've seen elsewhere. Trump is down by 11 points on the hypothetical ballot test, while his job approval sits at a weak 44. And people say, well, you know, historically, the president always gets what his approval is. That's not always true, but even if it were true, that's still pretty weak.
Yeah, well, 44. Usually lose with that.
Yeah. Very few voters say they could change their mind, an unsurprising reality considering the candidates and campaign to date. So, in other words, whereas at this point in time there were 11% undecided, now it's closer to 4%. So that's another difference between 2020 and 2016.
Okay.
Trump's path to victory, and that's how Biden hits 50, because
Right.
there just aren't that many undecideds. And those that are often, a mix, and this is why you can't predict what the undecideds will do. Some of them are disaffected Republicans who can't bring themselves to say they're going to vote for Trump, and then they vote for Trump. And some of them are young people and people of color who just always make up their mind late because they don't pay attention to politics, which is another story we'll talk about in a minute. Trump's path to victory continues to be only through the Electoral College, or maybe the courts, since he'll lose the popular vote pretty handily. Unfortunately for the president and his party, Biden leads consistently in at least 4 crucial states Trump won in 2016. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona, and at least a few others are pure toss-ups. North Carolina, Florida, and Iowa. If Iowa's a toss-up, if Texas is a toss-up, if Georgia's a toss-up, If Ohio's a toss-up, you got problems.
Yeah.
But each day, Trump's
if
window
you're
closes a bit more, shrinking any small chance he might have to overtake Biden in the battlegrounds. As far as the Senate goes, we have the usual 4 races everybody always talks about. Colorado, Arizona, Maine, North Carolina.
Okay.
But beyond those 4 races, Republicans Joni Ernst and David Perdue of Georgia are running even or trailing. And you know what? He didn't even here we go. He does mention it. In addition to these contests, Democrats have longer shot opportunities in Montana, Alaska, a second Georgia seat, Kansas, and Texas are worth watching. And you know what? If you're going to spend money now, if you have any money left after giving everything you possibly could to the Democratic Party, Biden, and the Senate, your best bet for spending money and having account for something and being efficient, your best bang for the buck right now is probably Kansas.
Okay.
Barbara Bollier, because Marshall, her Republican opponent, has really made some major errors. And also, if you have a little extra after Bollier, you should spend it to Theresa Greenfield in Iowa, because Joni Ernst doesn't know the price of soybeans.
Right.
And in Iowa, that matters.
Yeah. Give her the, you know what? We should have been encouraging people to donate the break-even price of soybeans as the donation.
I'm not worried anymore about Gary Peters in Michigan. I think he's up about 5 or 6 points. Good. It's going to be a closer race. Biden will probably outpace him. But it looks like he's over 50. And so, even if there's late breakers, I think he'll wind up winning. Right. By the way, Obama's out there cutting after people like Gary Peters right now.
Yeah. Well, okay. He's famous.
And there's an interesting story, because George Bush told him not to do it. Said, you're best as an ex-president to just sort of keep your powder dry and stay out of the race. And Obama said, not with this guy.
Yeah, well,
which tells you everything you need to know about the difference between the two.
Yeah, that's nice, and it's good news, because we weren't always positive that was going to happen with Obama. I think he would prefer to stay that way. Right.
So, that's pretty much the background for all of that. Here's one in Vanity Fair. The case for a blue tidal wave based on the fundamentals. That's from the Pundit Roundup, but I'll get that for you and just throw it under the Borat ad so you can find it easy.
I'm just staring at the Borat ad. Okay.
Well, you can't unsee it. Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, that's true.
If there's another tick down, it's a total bloodbath. How Trump's self-destructive candidacy could blow up the electoral map. This is by Peter Hamby, who I really like. Ex-CNN correspondent, spent time at the Shorenstein Center, wrote some pretty definitive articles about how political campaigning has changed in regard to how it's covered. No more boys on the bus stuff.
Yeah.
Democrats' massive fundraising, down-ballot energy, and seniors turning against Trump signal a potential blue wave election with unexpected flips, as one South Carolina strategist said. Biden supporters in red states are hopeful. And they are. Recent polls from CNN and NBC showed Biden with a more than 20-point lead among voters over the age of 65. Democrats haven't won that age group since the 2000 election, but the way for Trump to get these people back, I would add, not Peter Hamby, but I would add, the best way to get them back is to attack Mr. Rogers.
Yes.
In maybe 60 minutes.
That son of a bitch.
Seniors became a reliable voting bloc for Republicans during the Obama era. They didn't like the black guy. Trump won seniors by 9 points over Clinton in 2016. Today, Biden is winning seniors in the aging upper Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania by healthy margins. And in the Sun Belt states, Georgia, Texas, and Arizona, Trump is still winning the olds, but his edge has diminished since 2016. Biden, his fellow senior citizen, is chewing into Republican margins. And in Florida, where the old vote is crucial, Trump defeated Clinton by 17. And thanks to COVID-19 and the president's hapless response to it, Biden's either winning or tied, depending upon the poll.
Okay. Well, don't call the
seniors
olds.
are a good strength to have because they're big in terms of expansion. Biden pollster John Anzalone told me the 6 core battleground states are older than people realize. Certainly people think of Arizona and Florida as having seniors, but so does the upper Midwest. Even when you expand into Iowa, you're still looking at a lot of senior votes. So that's all good.
Okay. Yeah.
In most years, the lament on the left is the Republicans vote and Democrats don't, but Biden and the pandemic have collided to form a coalition of voters who actually return ballots and show up to the polls. That's what we were seeing with those early votes that I was telling you. Yeah. Not that it tells you who wins, but you're seeing people actually come out and vote.
Yeah, true.
Right? So very, very good reasons
Okay.
to be optimistic. Even in Kansas, private polling also tells the story of Trump's demise in Kansas's 3rd congressional district, a suburban district on the Kansas side of Kansas City. That was a toss-up House seat in 2018. Biden is currently leading Trump by 55-40, according to internal polling provided to Vanity Fair. That's yet another district, right?
Okay.
That's
right.
important. Clinton won the district by a single point in 2016. The same internal poll showed Biden's net favorable at 55, very favorable rating growing, and Trump's very favorable rating has been stalled between 28 and 32. Biden's kicking the crap out of Trump in eastern Kansas. If that's happening elsewhere, it's unlikely Trump is faring much better outside Atlanta, Des Moines, Charlotte, or Houston. And that's precisely why the National Republican Congressional Committee yanked its spending from the Houston media market a month ago, abandoning its House candidates in Harris County may be the biggest early tell that red states were slipping away from the GOP, at least in the House.
All right.
At this stage in the campaign, the flow of money tells you a lot about where things are going. Biden and the Democrats have more money than God. Biden and his outside groups are outspending Trump allies 2-1 in the Florida Panhandle, which is basically Alabama, but with better bars. Trump entered Peter would know, he's been all over the place.
Yes, sir.
Biden entered the final month of the race with $432 million to spend, meaning he's carpet bombing every corner of every swing state with TV, digital, radio. I just read another piece, by the way, just parenthetically, about Biden going after Asian American and Pacific Island votes in Florida, an otherwise neglected area, while the Caribbean vote is left to Kamala Harris to try to bring up some excitement there, given her family ties. Right? Black churches across America will have gassed up buses to the polls, sitting in the parking lot the next 2 Sundays, souls to the polls. Trump, in comparison, only had $251 million in the bank, and in his case, and he actually, the latest one, he only had $90 million.
Right.
I mean, the guy raised $1.5 billion, and Brad Parscale spent it on cars. It looks like for himself.
Yeah. Oh, he got ripped off. That's great.
In his case, and I think when the diagnostics are done on how you spend all that money, it really looked like Parscale spent it on the digital version of the Richard Viguerie mail fraud stuff.
Yeah.
72 cents or 71 cents out of every dollar raised is spent on fundraising.
Yeah.
To raise more money.
Right.
But that's, shall we say, inefficient.
Yes.
If you give me $1 and I spend 70 of it to get another, 30 out of it, and the other guy is spending 70% of that dollar on ads against me, I think he wins.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe he thought that it would work out okay because last time they did so well with Facebook, which cost so much less, and who knows what's happening in dark Facebook land, but it's not showing up in the polls anywhere.
Right. So he writes, Trump's campaign seems to be running on fumes, which is why Trump has canceled his ad buys in competitive states like Wisconsin, Ohio, and Iowa. And the president even took precious time off the campaign trail to raise money in person in Orange County, which doesn't signal anything positive about his cash flow. Or the investment sensibilities of the lip filler crowd in Newport Beach.
Okay. Where's that?
California.
I see.
Meanwhile, Republican outside groups are funneling cash to red states to help prop up the Senate candidates in Alaska, Georgia, South Carolina, Texas, Arizona, and Kansas. In a blue tsunami scenario, one or several of those red states could end up blue, like Indiana in 2008. Remember, Pence is going to Indiana. But if that happens, and it's still an enormous if, it'll happen because the national political environment aligned with down-ballot Democrats already doing work in red states.
Yeah. Hey, that would be
Biden
great.
supporters in red states are hopeful. He's given us a reason to be excited by building momentum in those unlikely states. That's why Howard Dean's 50-state strategy made sense. It always made sense.
All right. Yeah. Imagine if we didn't have the infrastructure to run in those states because we thought that was a bad idea.
Anyway, if Biden sails into Election Day with a 10-point national lead and America's most dependable voters, it is back. Republicans might need to invent a new synonym for bloodbath. Maybe Ben Sass will come up with one, but only in private, of course.
Yes, right. Keep it to yourself.
So that's what's going on.
Okay.
That's my summary for today.
Very
I think
good.
it's a pretty clear idea about what's happening here.
Yeah. I mean, I think everything wraps up nicely. It seems pretty clear. Okay. Are the sanitation engineers
And
linked to that?
here's a new soundbite that just came out, recorded by Manu Raju.
Yes.
When host Eric Bolling, this is on some hardly ever watched thing, maybe it's OANN, I'm not sure, but Eric Bolling was used to be Fox and he's no longer there.
Is that right? Okay.
When host Eric Bolling asked the president what he would do differently if he got a mulligan or a do-over on his COVID response, Trump replied, not much.
Well,
he's perfectly happy with 218,000 people dead. Go vote.
Even the rest of them that are dead. And another study on excess deaths I saw came out yesterday.
Yeah, on nearly 300,000 from CDC. And of course, the whole Great Barrington issue about masks and herd immunity is just ridiculously stupid. And by the way, I don't need to remind you, but Trump was the guy who put babies in cages, and now they can't find their parents.
Right. What was the numbers yesterday? 545 of the kids that they still have separated from their parents, and they're now saying, we may never find those parents. We don't know where they are. We have no way of finding them. So what do we do with 500? Okay. So once again, I guess if you could convince the QAnon people that they were really interested in kidnapping, children being kidnapped and spirited away from their parents and maybe trafficked, they would pay attention to this, but they're not interested in that. It's quite a combination. Yeah, so only normal people will care about that. And
anyway, that's the story for today. We'll have to come up with some new material for tomorrow, but I think we will.
Yeah, the president, he's sort of into that generating.
I mean,
material.
don't get me wrong. I got more. It's just out of time.
Right. True. I would have expected to hear the sanitation engineers in Abbey by now. So they may be voting.
So any minute.
I think so. I feel like it's incomplete unless we hear her bark. But okay, we'll just.
I will say this though. The Connecticut positivity rate was 1%, and it's now up to 3%. So it's everywhere. We're a, quote, good state, end quote.
Yeah.
So wherever you are, you're at risk. And
Pretty much.
This is going to be the story of the election. I'm just telling you.
I
did tell you.
Right.
I'm telling you now, and after it's done, I'll tell you I said that.
It's really going to be interesting as things turn colder and November rolls in and people are having to make that decision that they really thought that there was going to be no problem, and all of a sudden it will actually be a very real problem. Some of them will have it and many more of them will fear it. It was a very dumb idea to wait to push, one side's voters to wait to vote in person. He's a dumb guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. Did you find, if you can send me that Eric Bolling thing, I'll include it for everybody to check it out. And all right, we'll just take this as a good sign. Tomorrow. It was nice and quiet. Good girl, Abby. And we'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Take care, my brother. Go have some breakfast. Eat some Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, right. Afterwards. Okay. Keep them hungry. That's I don't know.
Have somebody call in so you can take a moment to eat.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe Armando will do it. He did. Yeah,
Armando should come on and talk about Florida.
He did yesterday, an hour, an hour plus.
And how are we doing in Florida? What do you say?
I don't remember.
What's the too long didn't listen?
I don't know. He voted. He shared some pictures of his experience, basically reiterating that yes, Florida would be doing its count early. So
does he think we're going to win?
He is cautiously optimistic. I think
cautiously optimistic about winning. And Florida is so important because they count first and announce early.
Yes. Most of our time was spent on...
You took an hour to say that?
No. Most of the time was on Pennsylvania and the Supreme Court rulings. And
that's a big deal. I'm glad you talked about
motions. Yeah, so, that's all out there. I guess the opposite end of the spectrum, what's happening in Pennsylvania. They don't count as the votes come in, and they may have some difficulty beginning that count when the votes finally do come in because they won't know which ones they should open and which ones they shouldn't, and it won't find out until possibly Election Day itself. So, real debacle. But if Florida comes through and not only reports early but reports a favorable result for Biden, Pennsylvania will possibly mean a lot less. But that's still the state that everybody thinks will be the tipping point when they do all their wargaming. So,
yep. All righty. Well, take care, and I'll talk to you on Thursday, which is tomorrow.
That is tomorrow. Good. All right. We'll see what happens between now and then. Find something crazy to talk about. Thanks, Greg. take care. And now I have to find something crazy to talk about, too. So, into pocket to do it. Abby, I'm giving you every chance to break in at this point, but apparently not. Okay, let's see. It could still happen. I put aside, yes. What did we have for that? Oh, here's a troubling story from the Washington Post. I guess we can fit in about all we care about in this one before the break. Threatening emails reportedly sent to Democratic voters in 3 swing states, sparking investigations. The Proud Boys are doing their keep in the vote email campaigning. Apparently, I don't know. I mean, I guess we have to say that it's allegedly emails connected to addresses that might be affiliated with people who might be in the Proud Boys. I don't know if it's all that clear. The subheader in the article here just says sender address was from the far-right Proud Boys, but the origin is unclear. So still just an allegation here, I guess. But authorities in Florida and Alaska, it's interesting choices here, on Tuesday were investigating threatening emails sent to Democratic voters that claimed to be from the Proud Boys, a far-right group supportive of President Trump, but appeared instead to be a deceptive campaign making use of a vulnerability in the organization's online network. So I guess it's entirely possible that these things have been faked up in a way that might seek to frame the poor, put-upon Proud Boys. I'm not certain if the article will sort it out, but it must be disconcerting, of course, to get an emailed threat about that. Although I guess the threat is seriously diminished if you've already voted. Another flat tire on the wagon here. The wheels coming off of the Trump train as we speak. We'll be right back. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. We forge ahead with the rest of these stories. Let's find out a little bit more about this Proud Boys email story and try to decide whether we believe that actual Proud Boys sent these things. They're very dumb, the emails, and it's a dumb strategy, and of course some will be illegal voter intimidation, so it's entirely possible that they did all these things because they love to intimidate people and they're very dumb. So, we'll see what happens here in reading through the article. Also odd that they decided to target, at least authorities are onto them in Florida and Alaska. They may have targeted people everywhere, but only Florida and Alaska authorities are interested? I don't know. Anyway, the emails, which appeared to target Democrats using data from digital databases known as voter files, it's kind of a funny way of putting it, known as, quote, voter files. Yes, that's what we call the files that have the names of voters in them. They make it sound like it's some sort of nefarious thing or some jargon. All right, well, anyway, the emails told recipients that the group, Proud Boys, was, quote, in possession of all your information. Or in other words, on the internet we say, all your information are belonging to us. In possession of all your information, and instructed voters to change their party registration, which I don't know if is even possible at this point, and cast their ballots for Trump. Why they would demand a change in party registration, I have no idea. And here's, I guess, a quote from the emails. You will vote for Trump on Election Day or we will come after you, warned the emails, which by Tuesday night were said to have reached voters in 4 states, 3 of them hotly contested swing states in the coming presidential election. But I guess only 2 states were actually concerned enough to speak to the reporters. The emails were reported in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Florida, and Alaska. Only Alaska is not a major focus of the presidential campaign, but it does have a closely watched race for the U.S. Senate. But of course, the message wasn't you will vote for, what's his name up there in Alaska? Sullivan? Is that right? I don't even know. Or we will come after you. Of course, we have secret ballots in this country, and it's difficult to find out who a person voted for. And maybe that's why they demanded that they change their voter registration as well, because that's the only thing that the voter files will tell you. If they didn't change their voter registration, then I assume that they weren't feeling threatened by the Proud Boys threat, and then it's not that we found out that you didn't vote for Trump, it's that we're angry that you didn't follow instructions in changing your voter registration, and from that we have assumed how your vote for president went. And it's probably pretty accurate too. They're not wrong about this, and now we're going to beat you up, or something like that. Probably also a great closing strategy for seniors. I hate Mr. Rogers. I hate 60 Minutes. As we added before, I hate McDonald's coffee and filet of fish. And P.S. We're going to beat up old people. All right. That's kind of one of their top fears. But never mind all that. Enrique Tarrio, the chairman of the Proud Boys. I didn't even realize they had one. And the Florida State Director of Latinos for Trump denied involvement, saying the group operates 2 sites and was increasingly migrating away from the domain used in the email campaign. That's not really all that super convincing, but okay. 2 weeks ago, I believe, we had Google Cloud Services drop us from their platform. So then we initiated a URL transfer, which is still in process, he said in an interview. He's very techie. He's a nerd. Beat him up. Anyway, we kind of just never used it. The technical data embedded in the emails do not make clear who was behind the barrage arriving in the inboxes of unsuspecting voters. Democrats in, Alachua County in north central Florida reported receiving the messages, according to interviews with several recipients. So too did voters in Alaska, said Casey Steinow, chair of the Alaska Democratic Party. Her communications director, Gene Devin, said Tuesday, we know Gene Devin, do we not? All right, said Tuesday night the FBI is now involved in the investigation. A spokeswoman for the Bureau's Anchorage field office did not respond to a request for comment. Kristen Clark, president and executive director of the National Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. That's too long of an organizational name. Stop it. Said her organization had received at least one report of similar email from a voter in Arizona. A spokeswoman for the Arizona Secretary of State's office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Too busy, I guess. This is absolutely something to be concerned about, said John Scott Railton, a senior researcher, not a researcher about seniors, but he's the senior researcher there, at Citizen Lab at the University of Toronto's, another one, the academic titles, they're driving me crazy. Senior researcher at the Citizen Lab at the University of Toronto's Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy. This is what election interference looks like. We find out from not only is this guy got a long title, but the hyphenated name, John Scott Railton. I'm making fun of Canadians, a favorite pastime here. He said he knew of a threatening email reaching a voter in Pennsylvania. It's a very picayune way of putting it. I heard about a guy in Pennsylvania who got one. I have an alcoholic now. All right. Well, anyway, federal authorities, elections officials, and experts in disinformation have issued dire warnings, not just about voter intimidation, but also about deceptive online campaigns playing up fears of intimidation tactics. So essentially, it seems to me that they're saying they're really not entirely sure that the Proud Boys really did this, and maybe that should have been more of an upfront thing. This is terribly unfair to the civic-minded Proud Boys. I guess, that's just the way it is. Let's see. Is there more that we can fish out of this? Guy from Homeland Security, I guess, saying, remember, you have ballot secrecy, so I guess you don't have to worry too much. The emails are meant to intimidate and undermine American voters' confidence in our elections. I don't know how well they're going to do with that one. We're still reviewing it, but it wouldn't be unheard of for a foreign actor to impersonate political figures or organizations, said John Holtquist, Senior Director of Analysis for Mandiant Threat Intelligence. Could be a form of voter intimidation, or it could be meant to inject discord into an already fragile process. Tarrio, determined to beat back the perception of involvement by the Proud Boys, said he had already spoken to an FBI agent about the episode. Amanda Vidal, a spokeswoman for the Bureau in Jacksonville, Florida, declined to comment. A spokesman for Alachua County Sheriff's Office said local authorities were coordinating with election officials and had also sought the assistance of the FBI. We believe them to be fraudulent, the spokesman, Art 4G, said of the emails. That's an unfortunate matrix glitch for you there. We believe the emails were forged, said spokesman Art 4G. You know, you sure his name's not Mick 4G? 4G McForger or something like that? What? All right, well, send note to Oliver Willis. He'll get a kick out of that one. The domain, by the way, in case you're trying to figure out, do we believe that that the Proud Boys really did this? And the domain involved is officialproudboys.com. So, kind of a dopey domain name, but apparently they actually once owned it. But it was, as they say here, recently dropped by a hosting company that uses Google Cloud services, according to Google Cloud spokesman Ted Ladd. If his name was like Ted Cloud, I'd really go crazy about this. The hosting service canceled the registration after Google Cloud notified the customer that a non-profit group had raised concerns about the Proud Boys, Ladd said. Which is a good idea. How much more of this is there, and are there really anything? I don't know. Anyway, I mean, I guess it's all meant to say we're not entirely sure that the Proud Boys really did this, and there's some doubt cast upon the idea that they did because the Proud Boys are first and foremost about actually beating you up in person. So, therefore, we can't possibly be guilty of threatening people via email because we're too busy actually threatening people in real life. That's not a great defense, but it's entirely possible. All right. We'll jump off of this story as it doesn't matter a great deal, right? Quite honestly, unless, if the authorities say, oh, yes, this is actually something they're doing, then what the hell? I guess that will be enough. Update from our friend Monica, who tweets this news to us. Fun fact, tweeted out by someone entirely different, whose tweet she includes here. But Monica saying, he can't use his favorite deadline. The fun fact is, after today, Trump can no longer promise to reveal his healthcare plan in 2 weeks and have it be before the election. So that's a pretty good point. I like that. Good eye there, Monica. Thanks for sharing that with us. Let's see. I'm going to have to put a couple other things aside and let the Twitter scroll go on so we don't miss too much in the way of breaking news. All right. Let's see. Other stories to share with you. I do have something. Maybe I'll have to ask Greg to see if he can grab this Wall Street Journal story because I can't read you the whole story, but I thought I would make a quick note of the fact that this happened. I have the tweet of Kyle Griffin here about the Wall Street Journal story reporting that Democratic lawmakers were that's members of Congress, telling Wall Street Journal that the U.S. Postal Service has blocked them from inspecting the agency's facilities in the lead up to the election. This is a quote here from who we don't know. These are phony baloney excuses. It's not like I'm trying to get into Area 51 or something. That sounds like, I think maybe Bill Pascrell from New Jersey was one of the members trying to get in and inspect the postal facilities just to see that everything was going as well as could be expected. And they just wouldn't let him in. They're hiding something as though it was some sort of national security secret. Seems kind of weird. We'll see if we can't get a hold of that Wall Street Journal article at some point or an equivalent piece from someplace that we have access to and can get past their firewalls. Wall Street Journal I'm not paying for right now. Okay, let's see. There was the story of the Chinese bank account. We might as well run through that story. The New York Times version of it from yesterday. Trump records shed new light on Chinese business pursuits. As he raises questions about his opponents standing with China, President Trump's taxes reveal details about his own activities there, including a previously unknown bank account. And as president, you're not really allowed to have unknown bank accounts, especially not in foreign countries. Mike McIntyre, Russ Beitner, and Suzanne Craig on the headlines for the byline for this. President Trump and his allies have tried to paint the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, They give you his full name and everything. As soft on China, in part by pointing to his son's business dealings there, which really doesn't have anything to do with foreign policy on China, but, they like to make the implication that it might. Senate Republicans produced a report asserting, among other things, that Mr. Biden's son, Hunter, quote, opened a bank account with a Chinese businessman, part of what it said were his numerous connections to foreign nationals and foreign governments across the globe. But Mr. Trump's own business history is filled with overseas financial deals, and some have involved the Chinese state. He spent a decade unsuccessfully pursuing projects in China, operating an office there during his first run for president, and forging a partnership with a major government-controlled company. And it turns out that China is one of only 3 foreign nations, the others are Britain and Ireland, where Mr. Trump maintains a bank account, according to an analysis of the president's tax records, which were obtained by the New York Times. The foreign accounts do not show up on Mr. Trump's public financial disclosures, where he must list personal assets because they are held under corporate names. The identities of the financial institutions are not clear. The Chinese account is controlled by Trump International Hotels Management, LLC. And who do you think controls that? Which the tax records show paid $188,561 in taxes in China while pursuing licensing deals there from 2013 to 2015. Recall that he paid $750 in taxes to the United States, $188,561 to China, because he loves China. The tax records do not include details on how much money may have passed through the overseas accounts, though the Internal Revenue Service does require filers to report the portion of their income derived from other countries. He just didn't do it. The British and Irish accounts are held by companies that operate Trump's golf courses in Scotland and Ireland, which regularly report millions of dollars in revenue from those countries. Trump International Hotels Management reported just a few $1,000s from China. In response to questions from the Times, Alan Garton, a lawyer for the Trump Organization, said the company had, quote, opened an account with a Chinese bank having offices in the United States in order to pay the local taxes associated with efforts to do business there. He said the company had opened the account after establishing an office in China to explore the potential for hotel deals in Asia. No deals, transactions, or other business activities ever materialized, and since 2015, the office has remained inactive, Mr. Garton said. Though the bank account remains open, it has never been used for any other purpose. Garton would not identify the bank in China where the account is held. Until last year, China's biggest state-controlled bank rented 3 floors in Trump Tower, a lucrative lease that drew accusations of a conflict of interest for the president. China continues to be an issue in the 2020 presidential campaign, from the president's trade war to his barbs over the origin of the coronavirus pandemic. His campaign has tried to portray Biden as a, quote, puppet of China. Where did he get that term from? Who, as vice president, misread the dangers posed by its growing power. Trump also sought to tar his opponent with overblown or unsubstantiated assertions about Hunter Biden's business dealings there while his father was in office. What does Trump say about him? He's like a vacuum cleaner. He follows his father around collecting, Trump said recently, referring to Biden's son. What a disgrace. It's a crime family, which is, of course, a confession. I would seek to have that marked, Your Honor, People's Exhibit 3. Mark this confession and enter it into evidence. Thank you. In a misleading claim amplified by surrogates like his son Donald Trump Jr. and his lawyer Rudy Giuliani, the president has said the younger Mr. Biden, quote, walked out of China with $1.5 billion after accompanying his father on an official trip in 2013. That's the big charge on him with respect to China. Numerous news articles and fact-checking sites have explained that the huge figure was actually a fundraising goal set by an investment firm in which Hunter Biden obtained a 10% stake after his father left office. So, there's a couple of meaningful facts there. $1.5 billion isn't what he got. It isn't even what the investment firm got, and it's a nice size investment, but it's not outlandish for a private equity investment firm to go hunting around on a funding drive and set a $1.5 billion target is not terribly unusual. But of course, one, it's not clear whether they actually got the $1.5 billion, and even if they did, there's no reason to believe that it goes to Hunter Biden, who owns a 10% stake in this firm, which was raised this money after Joe Biden was out of office. The firm did receive financial backing from a large state-controlled bank, but it's not clear the fundraising target was ever met, and there's no evidence Hunter Biden received a large personal payout. As for the former vice president, his public financial disclosures, along with the income tax returns that he voluntarily released, show no income or business dealings of his own in China. However, there is ample evidence of Trump's efforts to join the myriad American firms that have long done business there, and the tax records for him and his companies that were obtained by the Times offer new details about them. As with Russia, where he explored hotel and tower projects in Moscow without success, Trump has long sought a licensing deal in China. His efforts go at least as far back as 2006, when he filed trademark applications in Hong Kong and the mainland. Many Chinese government approvals came after he became president, sort of the opposite of the way Biden was doing things. The president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, also won Chinese trademark approvals for her personal business after she joined the White House staff. So again, kind of upside down. In 2008, Mr. Trump pursued an office tower project in Guangzhou that he never got off the ground, but his efforts accelerated in 2012 with the opening of a Shanghai office, and tax records show that one of Mr. Trump's China-related companies, THC China Development LLC. That's interesting. So I'm sure the T in that is Trump, but THC, problematic abbreviation these days, but okay. THC China Development LLC claimed $84,000 in deductions that year for travel costs, legal fees, and office expenses. After effectively planting his flag there, Trump found a partner in the State Grid Corporation, one of the nation's largest government-controlled enterprises. The French press agency, AFP, reported in 2016 that the partnership would have involved licensing and managing a development in Beijing. Trump was reportedly still pursuing the deal months into his first presidential campaign, but it was abandoned after State Grid became ensnared in a, you'll never guess, corruption investigation by Chinese authorities. How weird. It is difficult to determine from the tax records precisely how much money Mr. Trump has spent trying to land business in China. The records show he's invested at least $192,000 in 5 small companies created specifically to pursue projects there over the years. Those companies claimed at least $97,400 in business expenses since 2010, including some minor payments for taxes and accounting fees as recently as 2018. But Trump's plans in China have largely been driven by a different company, Trump International Hotels Management, the one with the Chinese bank account. The company has direct ownership of THC China Development, but is also involved in management of other Trump-branded properties around the world, and it's not possible to discern from the tax records how much of its financial activity is China-related. It normally reports a few $1 million in annual income and deductible expenses. Now, in 2017, while he was president, the company reported an unusually large spike in revenue, some $17.5 million, more than the previous 5 years combined. It was accompanied by a $15.1 million withdrawal by Mr. Trump from the company's capital account. So in case you were like, I don't know why you would be listening to the show and clinging to the idea that, well, it's one of many Trump-owned and Trump-controlled corporations that has this money, but that's different from Trump personally. Just, again, take note that as soon as he becomes president, in 2017, all of a sudden the company takes in more money, 5 times more money or something, or, more money than the previous 5 years combined, $17.5 million. And what happens to the money? What happens to the money is Donald Trump says, I want to take $15.1 million out of the bank account of this company and give it to myself. Well, I guess you're allowed to do that. You control the company. So in other words, China deposited $17 million in a bank account owned and controlled by Donald Trump's companies there. And Donald Trump himself withdrew $15 of the $17 million because he wanted to. And that's that. What more do you need? On the president's public financial disclosures for that year, he reported the large revenue figure and described it only as management fees and other contract payments. One significant event for the company that is known to have occurred in 2017 was the buyout of its management contract for the Soho Hotel in New York, which Bloomberg reported to have cost around $6 million. What's the rest of it? I don't know. Mr. Garten would not comment on the specific amount cited by Bloomberg, but said the contract buyout represented a significant portion of the company's revenue and that the remaining money was not related to China. Outside of China, Trump has had more success attracting wealthy Chinese buyers for his properties in other countries. His hotels and towers in Las Vegas and Vancouver, British Columbia, locales known for attracting Chinese real estate investors, have found numerous Chinese purchasers and in at least one instance drew the attention of the FBI. During the 2016 campaign, a shell company controlled by a Chinese couple from Vancouver bought 11 units for $3.1 million in the Las Vegas tower that Trump co-owns with the casino magnate Phil Ruffin. The owner of a Las Vegas-based financial services firm told the Times he was later visited by two FBI agents asking about the company behind the purchases, which he said had used his office address in incorporation papers without his knowledge. It's a little shady. It's not known what became of the inquiry. Mr. Garten said the Trump Organization had never been contacted by the FBI and has no knowledge of any investigation. In Vancouver, numerous Chinese buyers of units in Trump's hotel and tower helped increase licensing fees from that project to $5.8 million in 2016, the year it was completed. According to tax records, the project was built by a Canadian-based firm controlled by the family of Malaysia's richest man, Tony Tia Thi Kian. I'm sure I mangled the name, but that's the basics of it in anglicized form. He operates hotels in China and elsewhere. CNN reported in 2018 that the Vancouver operation was the subject of a counterintelligence review related to Ivanka Trump's need for a security clearance. And I guess they gave it to her anyway. And not long after winning the 2016 election, Trump reported selling a penthouse in one of his Manhattan buildings for $15.8 million to a Chinese-American businesswoman named Xiao Yan Chen, who bought the unit, which was previously occupied by Ivanka and her husband Jared Kushner, in an off-market transaction. Ms. Chen runs an international consulting firm and reportedly has high-level connections to government and political elites in China. Trump's tax records show that he reported a capital gain of at least $5.6 million on that penthouse sale in 2017, his first year as president. So that one a little murky and a little swampy, but basically you get the idea. When Ivanka and Jared moved to Washington to serve in his administration, he sold their penthouse out from under him and pocketed the money for himself. I guess she never owned it outright. She just had the right to occupy it. And he chose to sell it to, it may be a little bit unfair in targeting everybody who happens to be Chinese that's buying his properties. But, with him, you got to investigate everything, I guess. All right, so that's where that stands. Lots of people insisting that ought to be one of the top stories that reporters are going after. And there's a lot more to learn there. So, and it feels like the sort of thing that the reporters might like to feed on for the rest of the 2 weeks remaining. But interesting story. And, I think eventually we will find out that as much was going on with respect to Trump and China as we worry was the case between Trump and Russia. All right. Let's see. As we head into our final break and then into our final segment, some more reporting here from CNN that seems relevant to one of the things we've been tracking with the coronavirus numbers over the last couple of days. I think at some point today we'll probably go over the top on 10,000 Americans who will have died of COVID since Trump promised to deliver the instant miracle cure for free to every senior in America, and maybe, just about maybe, everybody who needs it anywhere in America. And of course, it was all a lie, and the fact that we don't care about it is kind of weird. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. So much to cover, and one segment left to do it. Let's jump in on a couple of these stories. We'll get right back to. Why don't we start by getting back to the thing I left off with just before the break that I said I've been tracking these things. Where I think at the end of the day yesterday, we were at 9,290 Americans who had died of coronavirus since Trump made his weird unhinged video that was meant to look like he was on the south lawn of the White House, but we're not really sure whether or not he was or was in front of a green screen instead. You never know. Let's see. So I thought that was of some interest. And by the way, also worth counting, I think we're just over 738,000 new cases diagnosed since he made this promise. And, I feel like I've made mention of it, but I feel like the rest of the country isn't quite up to speed. Everyone come agree with me. This is, I think, really among the most depraved lies that Trump has ever told, just because of the sensitivities of the issue and the outlandishness of the promise. To stand out there and tell people, I had coronavirus, I was on death's door, I was given a drug that instantly made me feel better, and I could have walked out of the hospital right then and there, and we're going to give it to all of you seniors, at least, in America for free, starting right away, and I have an order that I'm going to sign, and I've already got it all ready, and we're going to move so fast. If you look at the video, I mean, it's actually pretty incriminating when you start to wonder, well, okay, where's the delivery of this stuff? And it's very striking that the only reason that we're not talking about these promises, I mean, we've been plagued by this coronavirus for 7+ months. 200 and something thousand people have died, 225, 226 now, and by the Worldometer's count, almost 300,000 by the excess deaths counts, as was reported the other day. And, 1,000 or just under these days, about 1,000 people dying a day, 50 to 60,000 people being diagnosed each day. To stand out there and say, I had it, I almost died, but I've discovered a drug, and I didn't invent it, but there's a drug out there that will instantly reverse all of that and take somebody, a 75-year-old man with all sorts of other comorbidities, by the way, and who contracts coronavirus seriously enough to have to report to the hospital, have his life turned around, life saved, and he's back out in almost instantly. Meanwhile, by the way, news is that Melania Trump, still sick, canceling campaign events because of a lingering cough, which suggests that she's still ill with symptoms from the coronavirus. Why didn't she get the miracle cure? Chris Christie apparently got the miracle cure. He was in bad shape too, and he was in the ICU for a week straight, but has walked out since, pretending he's learned a lesson because he got the magic drug. And Trump gets out there and tells the people who are the most vulnerable, most scared about this thing, I'll save you and I'll do it right away for free. and 10,000 other people have died, and 750,000 more people found out in the time since he promised that they have the virus and they could really use the magic cure. It apparently works best early. So, maybe the more relevant number is the number of people who have had positive tests since then, because you can still intervene with them. The people who died, the 10,000, tragic as it is, you might not have been able to save them with this drug, even if he had acted quickly. But the fact is, he's not going to act. There's not enough of this drug. He's not giving it out for free. It's all a lie, and it's so sick. And I'm surprised that it's not more of a focus, so I'll make it more of a focus. Anyway, I did notice, however, in the latest thread about it, when I gave the latest number on Twitter, there were some, because it got retweeted by some very popular accounts, it also reached some Trump fans who tried to push back with claims that my friend's friend totally got it for free, just like the president said, which sounds a little dubious. Or, you need to read up, do some research. It's out there, but it's working and people are getting it. There is some possibility, of course, that there are people getting the drug because, of course, the drug is going through trials to try and determine for sure, scientifically determine, if you listen to the scientists, scientifically determine the drug's effectiveness and safety. And so, there will be people who get the drug for free because they've agreed, I'll take it, inject me with this stuff that we don't know for sure that it's entirely safe or even works. But I'm willing to take the risk because otherwise I'm in real trouble here. Plus, I heard the president say it was awesome, so give me that. And as the deal is usually written there, they'll give you that drug for free if you're willing to be a guinea pig. So it exists, and it might be, for all I know, that one of these Trump fans who said, my friend's friend got it, really did get it. They're part of the drug trial. That could be. But there are still problems with getting out there and promising it for free to every senior in America immediately, because none of that stuff is happening. I picked up this article from the 16th from CNN. It kind of explains some of the problems. Trump's pursuit, or a related problem, which is very interesting, along with, which other outlet did I pick up from here? New York Times, on the antibody treatment specifically. But this first article of interest here from CNN, Trump's pursuit of coronavirus vaccine, which we all, wanted him to pursue, of course, but to do so safely and scientifically. This pursuit of a coronavirus vaccine comes at the expense of therapies he now claims as a cure. Just sort of a curious and ironic situation that's developed here. Sarah Murray and Jeremy Diamond reporting for CNN. When President Donald Trump huddled with vaccine makers last spring, the CEO of Regeneron, who landed an audience with the president after a private call to a well-placed White House advisor, that's how they got in the door, made the most of the chance to plug his company's coronavirus treatment. During that face-to-face meeting at the White House in March, Trump appeared taken with Dr. Len Schleifer's, I'm guessing it's the pronunciation, promise of a treatment that could speed up the recovery for sick coronavirus patients and prevent others from becoming infected. At least one top government scientist was also convinced. It was Dr. Rick Bright, who we hear so much about. Former head of biomedical research at the Department of Health and Human Services, he had witnessed Schleifer's phone pitch for the right to make his case to Trump directly. He, too, believed that monoclonal antibodies held huge potential for combating the pandemic. But in the months that followed, Trump's focus drifted toward other unproven treatments such as hydroxychloroquine and the bigger prize, admittedly, of developing a vaccine. Scientists inside and outside the government tried to prod the administration to aggressively invest in antibody treatments such as Regeneron's, but the Trump team waited months to ink a deal to invest in their manufacturing. It was very disappointing that the administration was only focusing on leaning forward on vaccines and not really choosing to do the same for antibodies, said Bright, who has since left the administration. There should have been no hesitation on leaning forward to address the supply chain and the volumes that we knew we would need. Ironically, the antibody cocktail Schleifer pitched in March is now Trump's miracle, quote, cure of choice. After taking a large dose of Regeneron's dual antibody cocktail during his recent hospitalization for coronavirus, Trump has touted the treatment and pledged to expedite its approval. To put it lightly, I would say, I was very sick and I took this medicine and it was incredible. It was incredible, Trump said in a video shortly after he got out of the hospital. You're going to get the same medicine and you're going to get it free, no charge, and we're going to get it to you soon. That's the real problem here. Experts say that's probably not going to happen. Even if Regeneron's treatment and another antibody cocktail is authorized by the Food and Drug Administration or another, and I understand Eli Lilly, they said, working on a similar one, there certainly won't be enough to treat anyone who falls ill with coronavirus. Concerns are already arising about how that limited supply will be distributed. Some worry that after the government's initial distribution, if there even is one, I would add, the treatment could wind up with such a high price tag that it serves only the most privileged patients. Since the very start of the pandemic, scientists have predicted monoclonal antibodies would be very effective treatment as well as preventative measure against COVID-19, and yet the Trump administration seems to have focused its Operation Warp Speed almost entirely on vaccines, says Representative Bill Foster, an Illinois Democrat and member of the House Coronavirus Subcommittee. How do they intend to allocate this life-saving treatment? Will it be dispensed on the basis to save the most human lives, or will they allow a market-based allocation where those who are able to afford it would get the treatments unavailable to ordinary Americans? While the Trump administration launched Operation Warp Speed to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in developing and manufacturing yet unproven vaccine candidates, the government's efforts to invest in promising therapeutics weren't as aggressive. And though the antibody therapies appear promising and seem to reduce levels of the virus and improve patients' symptoms, they have not yet been proven effective for coronavirus patients, and there is not yet evidence to support the notion that they could be a life-saving treatment. Much less a cure, I would add to that. But they could be. But yes, they have some testing to do, and that's where people are getting them for free, I guess. If we knew that something was going to work as confidently as we knew that a vaccine was going to work, we should have done it much sooner, a senior federal health official said. But therapies are always a second stepson to what goes on with vaccines. To be sure, antibody cocktails, there's a to be sure for you. Antibody cocktails were just one of many unproven treatments that Trump was hearing about back in March, and the administration inevitably had to choose to gamble on some and not on others. And there are plenty of experts, both inside and outside the administration, who believe the government made the right choice by focusing more of its energy and investment on vaccines. Still, the Regeneron case reveals how the Trump administration went about setting such consequential priorities, often against the backdrop of Trump's vacillating attention. Paul Mango, that's apparently a real name, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy at the Department of Health and Human Services, disputed the idea that the administration was slow to invest in manufacturing for antibody treatments, saying the science simply wasn't there yet to justify such an investment. It's the same principle we use for vaccines, which is we didn't want to make any investments in manufacturing until we saw early results from trials, Mango said. All right, that's a sensible enough sounding argument. After his diagnosis with coronavirus and a brief stint in the hospital, the president emerged as an evangelist for Regeneron's treatment and others like it. I wasn't feeling so hot, and within a very short period of time, they gave me Regeneron. It's called Regeneron and other things too, in case I got it wrong. But I think this was the key, Trump said in a propaganda-style video, nice tag there, recorded last week. They gave me Regeneron, and it was like unbelievable. I felt good immediately. It wasn't just a therapeutic, the president insisted. It made me better. I call that a cure. But the president's cure, in scare quotes, is currently available to virtually no one else in the United States. Regeneron and Eli Lilly are both in the midst of clinical trials to test their antibody treatments in coronavirus patients, and both companies have requested emergency use authorization from the FDA, which are pending. Again, key element of the video was it's ready to go, and he implied that it was some sort of order that he was going to sign immediately that was going to make this a reality. But again, emergency use authorizations don't involve the signature of any sort of executive order. It takes a while. Of course, another major element of the video was him saying the FDA is moving very quickly on these things, but he's saying things that could take years are taking weeks or even less. They're moving very fast, and it's because of me. He made sure to throw in there at the end. But he makes the promise in the video that things that often take a long time with the FDA are going to be speeded up, and we're going to get them moving immediately because of me. And really nothing has changed. And here, on the 16th, that's 8 days after he made that video, they're still saying that the emergency use authorization is pending. What about, I'm going to immediately do something? Immediately means immediately. Anyway, well, here's the explanation. He tends to be somewhat childlike in understanding how pharmaceuticals work, said Dr. Peter Hotez. That's, I think, Hotez. We'll see about the pronunciation of that one. Director for the Center for Vaccine Development at Texas Children's Hospital. So he knows both about vaccines and what's childlike, I guess. What an expert. He's always had this magical thinking about biomedical inventions, starting with hydroxychloroquine. The president received a special dispensation, commonly known as compassionate use, in order to get a dose of Regeneron's antibody cocktail, and I guess he got a very high dose of it at that. Good side note here, compassionate use ordinarily goes to, last-ditch effort patients. In other words, people, it's normally reserved for if all else fails and you're going to die, if we don't try something else, we'll let you try this something else. So maybe he either overrode that, which is a possibility for the President of the United States, or he could have been one of the dyers, as he said in the news article the other day. All right. Well, his spotlight on the treatment has renewed concerns that there won't be adequate supplies and raised questions about how those supplies will be distributed. This is all very complicated because it's real lives at stake, Regeneron's CEO told CNBC after Trump touted the treatment he received. But of course, we want to get definitive evidence, so it's a tough act to balance. Monoclonal antibody treatments are developed in a lab to kickstart the immune response. Regeneron had effectively used the technology to develop a trio of antibodies that help treat patients sick with the Ebola virus, which gave scientists hope that antibody treatments may work in the fight against coronavirus as well. But meanwhile, by the way, their most famous patient is out there saying, don't trust scientists. Joe Biden trusts scientists. I don't. That's supposed to be his selling point. They should have injected him with something else. Anyway, we're going to be providing Regeneron all over the country very shortly at no cost, Trump said Thursday. That is to say, 10 days after he first promised it. He's still reiterating all this. He said on Thursday, providing, of course, no other details. Privately, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar has also assured lawmakers that the administration is confident it has put enough manufacturing might behind antibody treatments. The government believes it will have, quote, well over 1 million doses of antibodies available to the public before the end of the year, HHS's Mango said. Mango, of course, makes me think of you cannot have the mango. This time you cannot have the antibodies. What was that? Chris Kattan's crazy character on SNL 100 years ago. Now, that's not all going to happen tomorrow, Mango cautioned. Yeah. Though the president said it was going. He said it was going to happen immediately. What are we on now? 13 days ago, almost 2 weeks. The U.S. is only likely to have sufficient doses of the antibody treatments, if they are approved, for a small sliver of patients. If the FDA only authorizes them for a narrow set of high-risk coronavirus patients, Mango said the government feels comfortable it will have enough doses available. But if the FDA were to authorize them for a broader set of coronavirus patients, or for people living in close quarters with someone who has COVID-19, supplies will fall short. It's curious. I wonder where, if they had to, would they have put Trump in that category? Was he one of the narrow set of high-risk coronavirus patients for whom the FDA might authorize this, or did he just say, give it to me anyway, regardless of the fact that I don't meet any of the criteria? Probably the latter. But anyway, in a recent interview on CBS's Face the Nation, Schleifer acknowledged that there wouldn't be enough antibody treatments such as Regeneron's for everyone who might benefit. We have to figure out ways to ration this, he said. Regeneron has been pushing the federal government for years to expand its investment in antibody manufacturing capacity in order to prepare for future pandemics. The company also recently partnered with Roche to significantly expand the doses it can manufacture going forward. We are doing everything we can, said Hala Mirza, Regeneron's Senior Vice President for Corporate Communications and Citizenship. It really will take a village beyond Regeneron. If the treatments are approved, the administration plans to take a similar approach to distribution as it did with remdesivir, Mango said. The administration will determine how many doses are allocated per state based on infection rates and other population data. Maybe, but also maybe about whether they voted for Trump in 2016. And then it will be up to each state to determine where those doses go. The government's distribution of doses is expected to be provided to patients free of charge, the government's distribution. Mango said they are committed to trying to keep the treatment affordable once it's available commercially, although some experts still worry it could wind up being too costly for many Americans. So a bit of a mixed message there. Trump, of course, saying we're going to give it to everybody who needs it or every senior in America free. The government saying, well, we'll buy some number of doses from Regeneron and give those out for free, but after that runs out, you're going to have to buy them from Regeneron, and gee whiz, we hope it's affordable, but maybe it won't be. So I guess, is that what we're supposed to think? Maybe this is only an exaggeration on Trump's part. Again, I don't love the idea of teasing people about free medicines and free cures. Where are we? I also just want to reiterate that we're going to make sure the most vulnerable people get these first, and we think that's a very important role, Mango said. While the development and production of these coronavirus-fighting therapies has moved at an accelerated pace, pandemic preparedness experts still believe there were missed opportunities along the way. You don't have enough for everybody to do post-exposure prophylaxis, said Luciana Borio, the former director for medical and biodefense preparedness policy at the National Security Council. I guess they don't have one of those anymore. But imagine the good you could do. She added, we will get there eventually. I just find it tragic that this has taken so long. If the Trump administration had hoped to make antibody cocktails available for their widest possible set of people who might benefit, anyone fighting COVID-19 or anyone living in close quarters with someone infected, the administration would have had to pour money into the manufacturing process months earlier, experts said. It would have been nice retrospectively, the senior federal health official said, noting that there are limited supplies of Regeneron's antibody cocktail today, but I don't think that there was enough known yet to warrant large-scale government investment, the official said. In the early phases of the pandemic, the White House Coronavirus Task Force was primarily focused on existing drugs that could help sick patients fight off the worst symptoms of coronavirus. While remdesivir showed some early promise with patients, the president was fixated on hydroxychloroquine. That's another problem. It was the huge push for hydroxychloroquine where the task force ended up going in circles on it, said a former administration official. Outside of discussions of remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine, the task force didn't focus much of its time on up-and-coming therapeutics. Bright, who alleged in a whistleblower complaint that he was removed from his post in biomedical research in part because he resisted efforts to widen the availability of hydroxychloroquine, said the administration was distracted by hydroxychloroquine. I think there's numerous therapies that warranted investigation that were just not given prioritization, he added. So there's a bit more to this one, but I think we've kind of got the gist of what's up with this and the limited availability. I thought I might add in here this additional piece from the New York Times that basically makes the same point from a slightly different perspective. Trump's antibody cure will be in short supply. All the weak points of American healthcare, testing delays, communication breakdowns, inequity, are working against this potential treatment. Katie Thomas wrote this one up just yesterday. Nearly 2 weeks ago, President Trump told Americans they would soon be getting an antibody treatment that he had promoted without evidence as a, quote, cure for the coronavirus. This weekend, as the country braced for another major wave of coronavirus infections, Trump's health secretary promised such therapies were just around the corner. But these statements are misleading at best. Even if the drugs are proven to work, still a big if, it worked for Trump, but if he had it, I guess this is a big if too, it hasn't worked for Melania. There's little chance that they will soon be widely available. A smooth distribution of the antibody treatments will be dependent on the very same factors that have so far bedeviled the country's response to COVID-19. Fast and plentiful testing, coordination between state and federal officials, and equitable access to health care. Supply will be extremely limited at first, even though the pool of patients who might benefit is vast, raising messy questions about who should be first in line for treatment. The drugs are believed to work best in people who have recently been infected and are not yet very sick. It is just a setup for everything challenging about the pandemic that we've had until now, which is confusion, inequity, delays, reliance on testing, said Dr. Walid Gilad, the director of the Center for Pharmaceutical Policy and Prescribing at the University of Pittsburgh. The therapies are promising, he said, but with everything that's gone wrong, it's going to continue to accentuate the problems. And, of course, you know, roughly 60,000 Americans are testing positive for the coronavirus every day. Yet, the company that provided the president's antibody treatment, Regeneron, said it will have only 50,000 doses initially. That's the whole stock. You can't even take care of a single day's worth of diagnoses with what they've got. Eli Lilly, which is developing a similar product, has said it will have 100,000 doses at first, but doesn't have them now. Regeneron will eventually have 300,000 doses, and Eli Lilly will have up to 1 million before the end of the year. That's nice, but maybe too late for Trump, certainly to deliver on any of his promises. Both companies have applied to the FDA for emergency authorization for their products. So where is it? What about the immediately thing? Administering the treatment is not as simple as handing out a bottle of pills. The therapies are given intravenously, requiring an infected person to visit a medical clinic or a hospital. That's assuming that the distribution will go smoothly. Officials with Operation Warp Speed, the government effort to speed treatments and vaccines to market, recently told reporters that the federal government would hand over to the states the job of allocating the initial doses of Regeneron drugs. Maybe that's actually a good idea. But those state agencies are overwhelmed from handling the current influx of new cases, as well as from planning for the distribution of coronavirus tests and future vaccines, and have not yet made detailed plans for deciding how to allocate the antibody treatments to hospitals and clinics. We really have got a lot going on, and this has not been front and center, said Dr. Marcus Plescia, the chief medical officer of the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials. Even some company executives have acknowledged that the country may not yet be up to the challenge. Dr. George Yankopoulos, the president and chief scientific officer for Regeneron, said in a recent call with investors and reporters that communities would need to have rapid testing and contact tracing in place to identify the best candidates for the treatments. So I said to my people, slow down the testing so that this miracle cure can't actually be administered properly. What a great idea. We are, as a society, literally trying to fly a plane while we're trying to build it here, he said. Early data about the therapies have shown that they help clear the virus in people who have recently been infected, and that they may help prevent hospitalizations. In another positive sign, the FDA recently approved an Ebola treatment made by Regeneron that uses the same technology. I mean, that's nice, but it doesn't mean much for this. Eli Lilly and Regeneron have said that antibodies might be used both as a treatment for those who are sick and to prevent infection in people who have been exposed. The treatments could serve as a bridge to a vaccine, protecting high-risk groups like nursing home residents and the workers who care for them. It's still unclear, though, whether the FDA will give a green light to emergency authorization. So, what about that big promise? Well, you know, it got made, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not. What can you do? And the only reason it's not a huge story is that everyone knows that the guy who said it is an outrageous liar who will say anything to gain a political advantage, and it doesn't have to be even nearly based in actual science or fact of any kind. And I guess we all dismiss it. The president is universally understood to have been lying about that, and so therefore it's not a story. It's amazing that could actually be the case. All right, time for us now to hand the microphones over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Let me give myself a little bit more time to tell you about what he's got coming up for you. And I'll do you that favor right now. Let's see. Trump demanded, of course, we know about this, that Barr investigate Joe and Hunter for something. And I see Rudy Giuliani is out on the TV now saying, well, the big problem is that Hunter Biden is a known pedophile. I'm sure he's going to get away with that one for the rest of the election period. What else has he got here? Older workers face higher unemployment amid the pandemic. Had you guessed that? It's true.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
What else? San Francisco officials passed legislation to allow the victims of racist 9/11 Karen calls to sue the caller. And a North Carolina insurance magnate who is also a prolific GOP donor has started serving a federal prison sentence for corruption-related convictions. Our favorite kind. That and more next.